So now it's Dr. Veterinary Medicine Hans Wyss, who came from Switzerland to tell us about the Swiss legislation on hyperflexion. He's director of the Swiss Federal Office for Food Safety and Veterinary Affairs, and he is honorary professor at the University of Bern.
In a discussion at lunch, I felt thrown back 35 years. 35 years, I was a journalist. I'm a veterinarian by profession, but I was a journalist at the Olympics in South Korea and gave an interview after about different methods practiced in equestrian sports. And we had a discussion. I really felt thrown back 35 years because in a certain way, it didn't change a lot. I'm a licensed show jumping rider since 43 years. I'm a pure amateur. I rode events on a level of 135 meters. I just say that, not to say that I'm a good rider, but that I practice this sport myself. So all what I will present has to be seen in knowing that I really like equestrian sports. I've been fascinated by horses since I'm a boy because I had the chance to work in agriculture with horses. So my relation to horses is a really a broad one, not just the horse sport or the equestrian sport. It's really a relation to horses. What I want to show you is we talk about responsibility in sports. I will show you what we did in legislation, but at the end, what we are discussing these 2 days is responsibility for animal welfare in equestrian sports. Just to show you, we are responsible in our office for food safety, nutrition, animal health, and animal welfare, and we really try to make our decisions on a scientific basis. So scientific facts are really important. I think the sport I love has a huge problem because we have a change in our society. We tolerate or we tolerated things that are no more accepted today. Just to give you an example, the pictures show a little bit what can be seen. The spurs, a lot of people who are riding themselves, they say, why do we need spurs? Why do we tolerate hind boots that do not protect the horse, but who want to provoke that the horse jumps much higher than normal? Why? Hind boots are for protection. So in the big indoor arena of the National Equestrian Center in Bern, there's a sentence written at the wall, in origin French, l'ignorance conduit à la brutalité. I'm sure this is really true. The principle of the Swiss Animal Welfare Act, the purpose of this act is to protect the dignity and the welfare of animals. And what is important is I think it's one article that is really important. No person may inflict pain, suffering, or harm on an animal, induce anxiety in an animal, or disregard its dignity in any other way without justification. It is forbidden to mishandle, neglect, or unnecessarily overwork animals. I think this is the most important sense. And the question is, to what extent do we have the right to use animals? This is a weighing of interests foreseen in our legislation. It compares the strains of the animals with the interests of the humans. It must show whether the latter can be regarded as overriding. And it is based on the aforementioned principles which correspond to our values in dealing with animals. So, no pain, no harm, as I've shown before. We have prohibited practices in equids, tail docking. You can read all that. I don't have to read it. I just want to show it. It's not only a question of hyperflexion or there are many practices forbidden in our legislation. It goes on, the use in sports of equids with severed or desensitized limb nerves. That's a question that was decided 35 years ago. Even if we had at that time until today not really a very, very good method to prove it. Removal of tactile hair, tying of the tongue, polling, and last but not least, hyperflexion of the neck or overextension of the back of an equid. Roll cur. And there we do not make a differentiation between hyperflexion and roll cur, because roll cur has become, for me, an expression accepted, even if it's a German word, accepted in all the different languages, that is, for me, not really different from hyperflexion. And it's always a question how far you go with hyperflexion. It's in effect since 2014, so we have an experience now for about nearly 10 years. And what is roll cur? What is hyperflexion? And when we did that, when we introduced it in our legislation, we had to define. So we defined it. At that time, when I had to describe what is roll cur, I said, it's an extreme overstretching, like a rolling in of the horse's neck, which is done under duress, so that the horse cannot free itself from the position. So the roll cur is a violent method that inflicts physical and psychological pain of the horse. This was our definition. And I mean, what is important for me as a rider and in my position as the Director General of our office and responsible for what we introduced in this Animal Welfare Act, it is the idea that the horse cannot free itself. It's not just a question. And I have to tell you, I saw hyperflexion much more 35 years ago in show jumping than in dressage. I saw a lot of riders riding on the training arena, their horses just on the draw reins. Just on the draw reins and the mouth really on the chest. They were sitting like that and galloping half an hour like that. I saw that myself. Riders who became later Olympic champions from different nations. So this is, in our understanding, important, this idea that the horse is really fixed and cannot free itself in this position. The FEI ban on roll cur, it was described that for periods not exceeding approximately 10 minutes without change. Change may constitute a period of relaxation or lengthening, or a movement which involves stretching the head and the neck of the horse. I mean, when I read this definition in 2010, 2011, I said, I will never understand that. I will never understand that you can call that a ban. It's a contradiction in itself to call a method a ban and to allow it for 10 minutes and then have a pause and then again. So this was my motivation to start the process. It was a decision by government, but it was prepared in our office. And so the Swiss ban was really triggered by the definition of the FEI of hyperflexion. And it is aimed specifically in where the inappropriate influence of the rider or the incorrect use of the equipment, for instance, draw reins, the unnatural posture of the horse are obvious, and the hyperflexion lasts longer than a minute. It's written several minutes, and several minutes, 2 minutes are several minutes. So it's really the understanding, and I think this will be the big challenge in discussing hyperflexion and roll cure. It can happen, even if you are a serious rider, that the head of the horse is behind the vertical. And we should pay attention not to call all that hyperflexion. This is my personal opinion. As a rider and as an observer of this sport for 40 years. So it is important, but it is not a logic to say that a method is banned and it is allowed for 10 minutes. I will never understand that. And this is the reason why we introduced the ban. So we talk about, as I said, responsibility. The responsibility of the rider, the control and sanctioning of the officials of the Swiss Equestrian Federation, the enforcement by the cantonal veterinary authorities. So in general, it is important in my understanding that the responsibility for the sport is the responsibility of the federations. As veterinary service, we are not able to do systematic controls. It is not possible. And if we would need to do systematic controls, it would be charged for the organizations, and it would be pretty expensive. So it must be an interest of the federations to control their rules and to control the rules that are fixed in animal welfare legislation. What is important, if we accept minor violations of the rules in the competitions and in the training arenas, we encourage the illegal actions at home and in training. So education is very important, but also really to tell the people when they are doing a practice that is banned, to have the courage to send them home. I'm really sure this is very, very important. The Swiss Equestrian Federation is committed to implementing Swiss animal welfare legislation. Charles Trollier, who is here, will make a presentation later. He was at that time the president of the Swiss Equestrian Federation. The associations, the Swiss Federation monitors the riding arena, admonishes, warns, or bans offending riders. And now the question is what, of course, the difficulty is the conflict of interest and the acceptance when you are a steward or when you are veterinarian. All who did this job, they know how difficult it can be. We are not, as I said, able to control, to make systematic controls. And I have to admit, there are just a few people in veterinary service who even know the equestrian sport. I mean, this is not easy to understand the whole sport, you need a lot of experience to be able to make controls. What we do, we support a research project for the machine detection by video film, the machine detection of the angle between the forehead, nose line, so the vertical, which severely limits the well-being of the horse. This is a project we financed, we co-financed, and it will be published. I don't know exactly when. I got the first results. In the future, perhaps this tool will help. And I say the tool will help. It will not be the solution, but perhaps it will help to have a better overview over the training arena, at events. It will not be the solution, but it will perhaps be a tool in a toolbox to make the sport better for the animals. At the end of my presentation, I think this is the main question. If the animals could speak, would we really listen? And they have a lot of possibilities how they speak to us. And we heard that today. We can see that when we visit events. The horse really speaks to us what is good and what is not. So my hope is that we really can change. Thank you.
Thank you very much.